and welcome to 06880, the podcast. I'm here with Tom Scarice, Superintendent of Schools of Westport. Hasn't even been here a year. So Tom, a year ago, you were the superintendent in Madison. Beautiful town. The kids were in the great Daniel Hand High School, leading a great school system. COVID was upending every aspect of life, including education. And you applied for this job, knowing that you'd have incredible challenges, probably wouldn't meet your staff in a normal way. It would be a long commute in a new town. So my question is, why?
That's a great question. Well, but a lot of that was really not into the equation when I decided to apply, interestingly enough. So the beginning part, I got really comfortable after 8 years in a lovely school community in Madison and fell in love with it so much that we moved there. I brought my wife and kids. We moved there. Kids were in the school system. And I think early on, that was really cool. It's a cool factor for my kids. And as they got older, that coolness factor wore off a little bit, especially when my daughter got to high school. But I'm a pretty driven person. Folks that know me know that I'm a very goal-oriented and driven person, and accomplished some really interesting things in Madison. And I hit a point where I felt, what's my next challenge? And I was having a little bit of an itch, and it actually started on a beach in Aruba the year before, in April of 2019, just talking to my wife after a long walk. So I think, at some point I have to think about maybe thinking of a new challenge professionally. And long story short, I get a phone call the day after Christmas in 2019 from a search consultant here who says, hey, you may be interested. So I began to do some research. I came across the 06880 blog, started tracking some stories. And in full candor, Dan, the challenges that I was picking up on and finding out about, I thought, wow, this actually could be a really good fit for me, what I can bring. This really could be the next spot for me, where I can stay for a while and do some really interesting work. So that became the beginning of an inquiry and then a pursuit. And when the pursuit started, it was, I want this job now. But when I said that, I had a movie in my mind. And I've said this a couple of times to people. The movie in my mind was not the one that I'm living in right now. In January and February, I'm interviewing with the board. And I had all these wonderful thoughts of addressing, 1,000 employees, at the first kickoff, and having these, events and meeting people in the community. And by, March, April, I knew it was going to be a lot different, and it has been a lot different. It's still been very positive, and it's still been, I think, a great school year, all things considered. I'm very proud of the people in the district, the patience that folks have shown, and there's been a lot of coming together for really good purposes, helping a generation that really is experiencing something that I don't think any other generation has experienced, the confluence of factors that they're faced with.
So what goes through your mind when you take this job? You can't meet your staff personally. You can't hang out with the students the way you normally do. So you pivot. How did you deal?
So you just mentioned the two things, okay? That's like telling Sandy Koufax, you can't pitch with your fastball and you can't pitch with that nasty curve. Okay, that's what that's like, because for me, 300 teachers I had in Madison, I knew every single teacher by their first name when I looked at them. To me, that's just how I lead. I have to walk around and know people. And students, I'm in my element. I mean, you're more apt to find me on the floor in a first grade classroom doing math with kids than you are in my office. One year for Christmas, my secretary, Madison, bought me a cowbell. So I never know where you are, so please wear this around your neck so I can at least kind of hear where you might be going. That was the biggest challenge coming here, is that the two areas that I have relied on to develop relationships, which is the core of everything I've ever done, were taken away from me. So how do you do it? Small, incremental, efforts over time, trying to find ways, in a two-dimensional world to connect, and really trying to learn the story of not just the district, but of individuals and the challenges they're facing. 1,000 employees with 1,000 stories, 5,500 kids with 5,500 stories. So it has been a real, that's been the biggest challenge. It really has been. For me, I found some relief in the past probably couple of months, getting out more. Been trying to interview people, really to learn more and more about the district, and really trying to see, what purpose, that I can serve and help leading to the next level. But it has delayed because of COVID.
So I'll get to the leadership and goals in a second, but
Sure.
1,000 employees,
Yeah.
5,500 students,
Yeah.
all of them have their stories.
Yeah.
Do one or two stand out?
It's the ones that do are the ones. I gave an opening speech to the faculty, my 10th year as superintendent, and every year I deliver a keynote, and I always try to find a way to tell stories and to inspire. And the best way that I found is by talking about the people who are there, either tying in something from the outside world to someone who's there. So for me, being able to do that, I had to do it like this. I had to do a keynote speech to the entire school district staring at a camera with a microphone. I mean, it was the most awkward. You can't get the feedback, that you can't get the body language. Am I boring the heck out of them? Do I sound like the junior senator from Georgia at 2 a.m. on C-SPAN right now, all by himself, Do I sound like that? Or are they kind of nodding their heads? I have no idea. So for me, I had to get into some, during that speech, I had made the comment about, I think the best systems have this covenant where you count on each other. I talked about, Bill Belichick, the do your job, kind of thing, and how we count on each other, how that's so critical that you can look on your left and look on your right and there's someone there to count on, professionally, emotionally, psychologically, whatever. So for me, the stories that stand out are probably the private, emotional ones where people have needed to talk through something because of what they're going through this year, and how can I help and how can I support. They're the most meaningful ones, but because they're so meaningful, they're probably the most private ones. So, a teacher going through a real health issue, or a spouse or a family member is going through a real health issue, those stand out for me. The ones also that stand out are the teachers and the faculty members and support staff that are going above and beyond and doing everything they can to provide some sense of normalcy to kids and really make sure that there's a sense of belonging in our schools for kids. So those are really remarkable too. Yeah.
So it sounds like the job of a superintendent, as you see it, is not just budgets and buildings and all that. It's people.
Yeah. It is. It's, I just, real quickly, I always tell my kids ask periodically, do you like your job? They always, for years they've asked. And I always say, there's certain parts of my job and certain parts of every job that I think people just don't like. You kind of plug your nose and get through it. And you listed part of that already, but the best part of it, and when you look at organizations that thrive, they thrive because of relationships. They thrive because of, I look at the balance between consistency and intensity. Some organizations will have these intense events and point to them as, this is the moment that we are going to get people to feel like they belong here. This is the moment we did this recognition. I believe in the consistency of small moments over day. I think the accumulation of small moments over days will exponentially tower over any seminal event that you can hold. So that happens through connections, that happens through talking, that happens through laughing. My motto, they know at work for me, it's work hard, laugh hard. And nothing beats a good belly laugh, but I work hard, I'm driven, I balance that out.
Yeah. So we're coming up on close to a year that you've been here. What's the district like? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What's ahead?
So I think there's some obvious ones, and I don't whitewash things. There's a lot of churn that happened, over a few years, and with that churn is uncertainty. There's insecurity, and I think at its core, there's elements of mistrust up and down the system, across the system. So that, to me, is the number one task, is to establish a strong sense of trust and a strong sense of belonging. And if leaders don't model and live that, the rest of the system never will. So we have a number of leaders in our system that are formal leaders, okay, that we have administrators, support administrators, coordinators. And then we have people who are leaders that don't have the title. Leadership to me is not about a title. Leadership is what you do. And we have a number of people who will perform the work of leadership, just don't have the title. And I think that's some of the most heroic work that happens. But it's that trust piece. It's following through on what you say you're going to do. Okay, it's really, really important. Honesty is one thing, and that's really critical. I take my words and I conform them to reality. That's important. You trust me if I'm honest. But integrity, that's different. That's when you take your actions and you conform them to your words. If you can do that over time, day after day, you start to establish this semblance of trust. Once you establish that semblance of trust, there's really not much you can't accomplish, okay? Now, then it comes to what I see as next on the horizon for us after we get that strong culture sense in place, a sense of purpose about what is our next level. You ask the question, I ask that question, what is our next level? There are so many talented people in this system, kids and adults. There's really not too much if we set our mind to it with a deep focus that we couldn't accomplish. And I always try to predict and scan the horizon. What is next? What are the kids walking into when they leave Staples? You take your traditional student stays with us for 13 years, okay, kindergarten through high school, all right? If we can predict what that world is like, what would we equip that student with? That question, in and of itself, to me, defines what our next level of work is. Is it the same experiences we do now? Are they different experiences? More or less of something? That's what excites me, because I think we're getting close to that. There's a real appetite, I've learned, to refreshing our curriculum. Okay, I've been going around talking to administrators and faculty, and they're ready. They feel like they've been kind of waiting for this for a couple of years now. They feel ready for that. So what does that look like? You gotta get a lot of fingerprints on that. I think it's gonna be really exciting. I think what we do next will be really exciting. But that projecting of where we're headed is what the work I like, the visionary piece.
But all of this has been colored by COVID.
Yes.
So everything that you're talking about, these students are having an experience that no students have ever had.
True.
So what's that going to mean for a first grader or a high school senior coming out of this?
Well, what's so important about that question is the all-encompassing way you ask it, because most people will limit it and put it in a box and talk specifically about academic skills. And I think that is too incomplete of a picture for us to be considering going forward. So, obviously there has been an experience like no other year when it comes to interruption of learning, okay? I will say, as an aside, our elementary group, our elementary schools, because we jumped in September with an everyday half-day model, you're in school for 3 hours, kids were getting their core reading and writing and math on a daily basis. And the principals and teachers are quite impressed that, wow, we really didn't experience the learning loss we thought we were going to. And they're very, very optimistic about the end of the year, kind of where kids are going to be. That said, you can't deny the interruption. But I think what that conversation needs to be broadened to is the social and emotional impact, which they're inextricably linked. You can't divorce social and emotional development from academic learning. And I think you can make a pretty strong case that all of the academic learning in the world won't amount to anything after your career in school if you don't have a strong social and emotional foundation. We spent, last couple of decades in public education pretty obsessed with the scores in learning, okay? And now the past 5 years or so, you've noticed the emergence of SEL, social emotional learning, really becoming a stronger theme. I think that's always been there. When I was a kid in the 70s, that was a big focus, when I was a kid. Child development, meeting kids where they are all the way through high school. And to me, that's going to be the challenge, is wrapping our arms around how do we fill in those gaps, because they're profound. I mean, what kids are experiencing, what they're missing from the void of interactions, the void of just unstructured play, just what you learn from unstructured play.
So what, you've talked about finding leaders in different places and all that you've discovered. What has surprised you about the system?
I would like to say the depth of the bench, but I was told about the talent levels, and that was true. I'm going to take a different angle and say that I was also told that the churn of leadership had led to a pretty deep sense of mistrust across the system. But in turn, what that's created is a real appetite to get back to a team feel. I mean, there's no question that, folks are ready and willing and want to get focused on really good work. Between some of the issues that the district had faced for a couple of years, and then really just overshadowed and towered by COVID, I think folks are now ready to get on the other side of that and say that's the past now. We're going to look forward thinking. So that appetite, I don't know if it surprised me as much. It's refreshing, but it's palpable. People are really ready to move forward in a real positive way, and that's just energizing.
So you've got a magic wand. I'm giving you the magic wand to wave wherever you want.
Yeah.
Unlimited pots of money. The Board of Finance has decided you can get anything you want.
Yeah.
What do you do? What's at the top of your list to wave that magic wand?
So I've always had and this is nothing that I've actually brought formally here to the school district. This is something historically that I've always wanted to implement. I think there's such a need for leadership development for everyone, because we're leaders. If we're not formal leaders, we're leaders somewhere in our life. Even if you're not a leader in your community, in your family, you're a leader of your own life. And there's so many traits in leadership that I feel can be taught and kids can be exposed to at young ages. I would love to have a real strong thread that when kids come, they're taught intrapersonal leadership, how to lead their own lives, and then interpersonal leadership as they grow and mature. So, I know that there's school districts that will build an academy for the arts, an academy for STEM. For me, I would love an academy that's focused on leadership. And I think in a community like this, it'd be embraced, number one. And I think it would send kids even to a further, to make a further impact when they leave our schools.
Wow. Sounds like something that money can't buy.
Yeah.
But creativity.
Absolutely. It is.
It takes all that.
The brain power there to figure that out. But that's something to me that I've always had this suppressed desire that we kind of dance around it. We study leadership a little bit, and we talk about it. We refer to it a lot in literature, or in examples of history. But I don't know if we do a real direct, experiential, training in leadership and how to be a leader and why that matters, and even just of your own life, as simple as that. So,
wow. Got a couple more minutes.
Sure.
Let me go back to that leadership one more time, because I think it's important to you and to everyone. When you talked about leaders who didn't necessarily have that title. Any examples?
Yeah, I think what we've seen are we've had some teachers really step up. We've had some paraprofessionals really step up in their schools and rally. If someone is going through a rough time, very quietly to support them. I think probably what's been most impressive is the way crossing over from where we were in a very defensive posture in a hybrid model to welcoming people in full time. Okay, there's a lot of anxiety. Okay, the Board of Ed meeting, 65 people write in, mostly faculty and staff, right? Write in with statements, okay? And I'm sitting there, listening to every single one and totally understand and empathize with the concerns. And I was really conservative the first half of the year. I mean, really conservative. And for one primary reason, it wasn't so much what was happening in the moment that was going to help me. If communities around us were opening up their schools, that really wasn't moving me so much, because at that time, I was thinking, how do you know where this is going? I can't say, well, in the pandemic of 2011, here's how we handled it, So I wasn't comfortable, but I knew that once we got past half the year and we had enough mileage in this one, that I could start to make some more decisions based on my own convictions. So I heard all those concerns and a lot offline as well. I will tell you, folks came into that school with their game face on. Elementary and middle school opened up, okay? And they put their game face on. And they did everything they could to make sure that those kids behind a mask, okay, felt a sense of safety and security. There are stories of teachers of what they've been doing for kids this year. I think it's lost on us. We don't realize that. You see this big screen behind us. So I'm teaching a class of 20 people. Oh, and by the way, there's a bunch of kids on there that I have to attend to. And this bimodal, kind of approach to teaching and learning. You want a hero, you want a leader. It's someone that does that and then will share with their colleagues, here's where I blew it and here's what worked. And you start to grow from there in those kind of collaborative cultures. So those are the kind of leaders that are small and almost unnoticeable, but what changed the tone. And it changed the tone so much from the late January, early February, that we found ourselves in March where I have principals saying to me, my teachers want to know when they can get out of rows and maybe get their kids together in desks again, closer to each other. And it's just let's get into the side of the April vacation. Hold on a second,
Wow.
But that had nothing. I could say nothing to do with my leadership. That was ground up, organic people who made it happen. These are the conditions. Kids are in. Here's the spacing we have. Here are the masks. Here's the curriculum. And they did their magic from there. So just countless, teachers across the system. But that bimodal instruction piece will blow you away if you watch it in action. It's not easy to do and never been asked to do. They just had to, dive into it this year.
Wow. Impressive. So going back right to the first question, any regrets?
No, not as far as coming to Westport, no, not at all. If anything, it's been incredibly energizing coming here. I feel a little bit of a career renewal, after 8 or so years in one position. It felt like, coming here. I remember being in Weston as an assistant superintendent and frequently talking about, well, what's going on in Westport? What's going on in Westport? And it was always an aspiration of mine to come back to Fairfield County. And I did say to my wife, I said, there's 1 or 2 districts that, if they called, I probably would be really interested in. Westport was the top of the list for me. So I don't regret that at all. Looking back, decisions that we've made, I could probably conjure up some, decisions along the way, but without a playbook, I don't consider it a regret because it really was the best thinking at that moment in time. There were a couple of things that I think maybe went against the grain a little bit, and some things that we said, hey, this is probably the best we can do for right now. The anxiety level, Dan, was so palpable among large numbers of families and teachers to start the year, even up until, the holidays.
Yeah.
And we just started to feel a sense, the vaccine development coming, and then the new year coming, 2020 was going to be behind us. It started to gain some more momentum. And that's, probably was a turning point for us about mid-year. So, but regrets, no, I don't live with regrets.
Well, listening to you, I can't imagine that the Board of Education had any regrets about handing you that contract.
Thank you.
I can't imagine a more candid conversation with a superintendent of schools. So thanks for all you've done and certainly looking ahead. Anything I should have asked that I didn't?
No, just ask me when I can come back. I'd love to come back. This is great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for watching. Tom Scarice, Superintendent of Westport Public Schools.